This is Brian from ScreenFiles.com, and I imagine that a lot of people, besides Warner Brothers executives that is, are disappointed at the performance of Batman v Superman. That being said, I think that how the movie performed, while not good, resulted in some very good things, and I want to look at least three of those. While Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice Underperforming isn't a great thing, at the same time it shows that moviegoers are the powers behind the throne. We don't get the credit, but we are the influencers. By which I mean Warner Brothers and Zack Snyder had a vision for the DC Cinematic Universe. I should say DC Extended Universe. And it was almost the polar opposite of Marvel's vision. So Marvel's characters, no matter what situation they're in, even very dangerous, intense situations, there's a thread of optimism that underlies everything they do. It makes it interesting to watch, and it gives, I think, real stakes to what they go through. They tend to be very colorful movies. I mean, if you look at Iron Man and Captain America's uniforms, they're very bright, they're very vivid. Marvel doesn't play with that. They just go for it. Like in the comics, I liked it a lot. So DC's approach, being opposite land, it's very dark. It rains a lot in DC superhero movies. It's very pessimistic and cynical, I think. And I think that's not a great thing. But people have said by not paying, and keep in mind, it made something in a ballpark of $376 million. So it's not that it didn't make money. It didn't make much in the way of profit, mind you, but it wasn't a flop. But what it showed is that people don't particularly, generalizing of course, but people don't like that vision. And people show that with their pocketbooks and their wallets. And that's what these studios hear. I mean, do they pay attention to people blogging and tweeting and so on? They probably notice it, but it's not going to move mountains. This moves mountains. This move by people to not see this movie has literally changed the artistic direction of an entire studio. That's pretty impressive, and it's cool because it says that if the studios aren't going to make movies, and it should be fairly obvious, by the way, if the studios aren't going to make movies that people want to see, people won't go see them. And people don't go see them, these movies, if they're not refigured, will eventually fail. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice didn't. Primarily because I think it was the first coming together of Batman and Superman. It was hard to... the likelihood of it failing was remote. But the thing is, it pretty much did as well as it did because it was a meeting of Batman v Superman. Never mind how, at least in my view, that meeting of these two characters was somewhat mediocre and a little uninspired. It was the meeting of these two characters, though. So it was the odds that that would fail, not too likely. Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, depending on what you read, was a very expensive film. And that's problematic, because if you look over at the Marvel end of things, Captain America Civil War cost in a ballpark of $250 million. It's now over $1 billion in terms of its box office receipts. But it cost to produce about $250 million. While I hear varying estimates of the cost of Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. I've heard $250 million, I've heard $300 million, I've heard $400 million. Now, I don't know which of those figures are accurate, to be totally honest, but I'm comfortable it's not $250 million. I suspect it's over $300 million. $400 million? It's possible. I have no idea. But, and this is confirmed with an article from the Wrap. And so, if they can't rein in their costs, and I'm not even going to speculate how they can do that. I mean, pay actors less. I don't know. Pay directors less. I'm not certain. But the idea that DC Entertainment movies tend to be significantly more expensive than Marvel Studios movies is problematic for obvious reasons. If a movie costs more to make, you include the marketing costs as well, that movie has to earn more money to break even. By way of illustration, if Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice cost, let's say, $250 million, I don't believe that, but just for discussion's sake, if we look at it as costing $250 million and it's earned, as I said, about $876, $879 million, that's not bad, actually. Typically, a metric to determine how much a movie has to earn is you take the production costs and double it. And to have, I should say, has to earn to be profitable, is you take the production costs and double it. So, let's go with that example. If it costs $250 million to produce, we're talking about $500 million. You got an advertising budget, at least $100 million. Could be more, could be less. But again, for our model, let's look at $100 million. So we're talking about $600 million to break even. It earned 870 something. That would be good if it cost $250 million. As I said, I suspect it did not. This is problematic. If it costs $300 million, again, let's double it. So $600 million now. Again, let's stick with our $100 million marketing budget. So now we have a $700 million movie. It earned $879. That's profitable. Again, not by a lot, but it is profitable. But that's the thing. If you apply the same logic, let's say I've read estimates that this movie could have cost about $400 million. Now again, let's double that. $800 million. That's just the production reaching profitability. Now if you throw in again, let's deal with the $1 million figure, $100 million figure I should say. Throw that in there now. So you're now talking about a $900 million movie. So if that were the case, this movie would have failed, which is why they say it didn't, which is why I don't think it's that high. But point being, though, it's that Warner Brothers and their DC Entertainment unit has to better control costs. If they can make a very well done movie, and $250 million is not chump change. It's a lot of money. Marvel does it all the time. I don't see why DC can't. Then the chances of their movies making a profit and bringing more of these characters onto the screen that many fans like increases. And so, hopefully they've learned from, one of the lessons that they've learned from the Batman v Superman situation is that they need their movies, they need to bring them in cheaper. And how you do that, I can't say. Again, I'm not looking at their books, but it would certainly benefit them to do so. And this is somewhat connected to my number one point. The way Zack Snyder treats these characters with such cynicism, such pessimism, is not how they were. Richard Donner's Superman is closer to the comic interpretation of that character than Zack Snyder's version can ever be. Now that's not to say though that, because Superman changes, and in the New 52 they could have, which I didn't read, a New 52 version of Superman I didn't read. It's quite possible that they darkened him a bit. to keep him in sync with the movie character. That's entirely possible. But at the same time, that is traditionally not how Superman is treated. The same thing with Batman. That is traditionally not how Batman is treated. Batman does not kill. That is not the same thing as saying Batman has not killed. It's a very, it's not a decision made lightly by Batman. That's the biggest issue that I had with it personally. In Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, he killed almost casualness to it, and I get the idea that I've read that Batman is supposedly been worn down by circumstances, which the movie never shows us. But my issue with that is movies are a visual medium. Duh. Show don't tell. If you're not going to show the events that led up to Batman turning homicidal, then it didn't happen. It's a movie. You need to show that. That's important. Same thing as I mentioned Superman before Batman. Superman does not allow others to die through his own inaction. That's not to say that people have not died because he wasn't able to get to somewhere in time or to move fast enough. Granted, I accept that has happened. Relatively minimal amount of times, but it has happened. The thing is, Superman was always the character to try to do his damnedest to save whomever, and it mattered to him. Conversely, Zack Snyder's version, it doesn't seem to matter. It doesn't seem that important. As long as he saves Lois and he saves his mother, and that's a problem. But a lot of people, again, the movie has its advocates. Some people like Zack Snyder's interpretation of Batman as well as Superman. The problem is there's just not enough people who like those interpretations for them to continue to do it. It cannot continue, literally. And it has nothing to do with the way I feel about it, which I don't like them as well. But it cannot happen because, and this is the important part, the people have spoken and they need a course correction. A movie studio, if you think about it, is like a ship, a large ship. I don't want to use the Titanic because we all know the fate of that particular vessel. But nonetheless, a movie studio is very ungainly, and it doesn't, especially the bigger they are, the harder it is to make decisions quickly and efficiently. So what Warner Brothers / DC Films are going through right now is course correction. They're turning this massive enterprise in another direction. And this is good, and this is necessary. And it's not going to be pretty. But the most important thing is, with course correction, if done in good faith, because you can just as easily move around a few executives and claim that you did something while everything is exactly the same as it was prior in terms of direction and emphasis. That's entirely possible, but let's be optimistic here. Hopefully what this has shown DC Entertainment and Warner Brothers is that the audience isn't there for the approach they've been taking for these characters, and this course correction is welcome. We can only wait and see if it does the job, but I'm optimistic and I think the signs are there that it will.